So, welcome to the latest in our series of GrowCFO masterclasses. I am really excited about this one today. I'm your host, Kevin Appleby, Head of Tech Partnerships at GrowCFO. And today, got one of our tech partners, Drivetrain, but we're not talking about Drivetrain specifically. We're talking about how to build an AI-ready finance team for 2026. And I'm excited about this. Kirk Kappelhoff is going to give us the presentation today. Kirk is the Senior Director of Strategic Finance at Drivetrain, but like me, he's got an experience that goes back into the Big Four as a management consultant and worked extensively with clients as a financial modeler, creating some very difficult models for difficult situations. So Kirk is very well versed at all the sorts of issues that come up in the planning and budgeting forecasting space, the modeling space. So, Kirk, over to you. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Yeah, really looking forward to this today. I'm a huge lover of Excel and AI and all things that can produce some sort of automation. That's what we're really going to be going through today, how to build an AI-ready finance team. The earliest adopters of this will, of course, be the people that are in the forefront. So that's what we really want to dive into here. So let's get started here. What we're talking about when we talk about the evolution of finance is this movement, not so much from spreadsheets to cloud. That piece has happened, but the movement from cloud to intelligence. And this is a bit more of a game changer than the movement from spreadsheets to cloud. What we saw with spreadsheets to cloud was a dynamic change, but it wasn't a change to the role. Maybe the environment changed a little bit, the way the process would work would change a little bit, but it wasn't a role change. What we're talking about from cloud to intelligence is an entire role change. I've seen teams reduce their workload specifically by up to 50% by making this adoption in a seamless way. What I'm going to show you today are some of the methods that they use, the best practice ones, although there's millions, that got those teams to save so much time. At the end of the day, what we typically see in finance and accounting is maybe a bit more of a downtime with extreme spikes at end of month and end of quarter, where, for the whole month, we have too many FTEs, but for the end of month, we have too few FTEs, right? And you keep that cycle going. This piece here has kind of stopped those spikes from occurring as abruptly as what we've typically experienced in the past. So let's start here with the poll question. We've probably all heard this before. AI will transform my finance in the next 3 to 5 years. If you've heard this, and Ken, I think are you on the polls? You are. Beautiful. Who's been told this? And I've jokingly put here, yes, every week. No, not really, but just put the one that makes most sense for you, and then we'll get some answers in here as we do this. But in general, I have heard this a lot. I know you guys have heard this a lot. But that prompts sort of a second question, which is how much has your finance transformed in a meaningful way today, actually? Okay, so this is the second poll question that we see right here as well. So, regardless of what we've actually heard, there's a difference between what's actually happened. Here we go 94% said yes, every single week I've heard about it, 6% said no, not really. The
I think
second poll
that's
here,
probably lying, Kirk. I don't believe
what's that?
that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say I tell this to myself every single day, at least 94% of the time. So it's closer to the truth than I would think. The second one, though, has your finance function already transformed in a meaningful way? This will be the truth teller because that 94%, well, let's see how much it holds up. If it's 94% actually, then amazing. We have a one-to-one match, but maybe not so much. Can you launch that second one too, then, Kevin, as well?
Sorry, hang on a second. I thought it had launched. My
Maybe
apologies.
it didn't. I missed it.
Uh, it won't. Apologies. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I'm still
You're
showing
good.
the other one. That's why it didn't launch. Sorry, my fault completely, Kirk.
No, you're all good.
Yep.
Oh, it came up and then it disappeared for
Oh,
me.
hang on. Let's go back.
This is why we need AI, automation. It's the
Need.
human factor that leads to the error.
Uh, let's see. Can I restart that? Let's see. Can I restart that? Relaunch poll. Yes, I can. Relaunch. Sorry,
Love that.
folks.
All good.
There we
So in my case, I'm going to give it a big thumbs up. Okay, so when we get those in, we'll see the comparison between the two. I think we already all know what the result will be. It's not going to be a high correlation between the two. Adoption does take longer typically than what you would expect from what people are anticipating, but how much longer is the question. The pieces that we want to go through today, look at that, it's almost a reverse opposite.
That's
14%
exactly
yes.
what I was expecting to see.
Yeah, exactly what we were expecting to see. So that makes sense. What we're going to show today will start the process of flipping that answer. And I would say maybe not years, but in weeks, you'll be able to have a meaningful impact on your finance function. That's what we're going to be going through. So let's talk about this new playbook that CFOs can sort of lead with. What I want to start with is something called MCP. Some of you may have heard of this, some of you may have not. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. What MCP does is it allows you to pull and connect data to GPT, Claude from other applications. For example, imagine if you could type into GPT, but it knew everything that you had in your Gmail. Or you could type into GPT or Claude, and it knew everything that you had in your calendar. Well, what we've designed at Drivetrain is one that's specific for FP&A, specific for Drivetrain. Now we're going to be showing a lot of tools here. This one here is just for Drivetrain. The only reason I'm showing it in Drivetrain is because we're the only tool on Earth that currently has it. Let me show you exactly what this looks like. This is me and Claude. You can see this right here, Kevin, right? Claude showing up for you?
That's showing up for me.
Sure. So what I might ask is, what is my revenue per FTE? Okay. Now I've linked this up to one of my tenants in Drivetrain. Each customer typically has one tenant, but this is going to go in and pull out the data. One thing that I like about Claude is it kind of tells you what it's thinking about as it's thinking. You can see here that it's going to go into my metrics in this case. I don't know what any of this means. I don't need to know. All I need to know is it going to retrieve the answer that I want? You can see now diving into versions, right? Obviously, versions important, and if we're doing budget versus actuals, we're going to talk a little bit about that later too. As it does this, I'm going to pull out the answer that it thinks makes most sense. Claude's very smart, and so here it already has anticipated maybe a second question, which might have been, show me by month. Now, this is cool, but a lot of AI assisted bots already can tell you your data within their system. So why would I want to bring it into Claude? Well, one thing that it can't tell you is everything else that's out there in the World Wide Web. So what I might say is, how does this compare with other similarly sized companies? Benchmark it. Okay, now I've taken data that, sure, that's been connected from my Drivetrain instance here, but I'm now going to compare it with everything on the web, which is something that's just not stored in Drivetrain. So I can already see that I'm significantly underperforming. That's not good news, right? November was this, but this is what was expected, right? All of these different pieces are giving me some good information. That's great. Now I want to know, how can I improve my revenue per FTE? Now I want a deeper level. What I'm asking for here is, let's say, a McKinsey level analysis of my revenue per FTE specifically. Here, address the headcount revenue imbalance. Your most critical issue. You have 3 to 4 times more employees than your revenue justifies. I'm adding too many heads. That's the number one killer. If anybody's interested, the number one killer of startups is overhiring. All of these pieces here that would have taken me personally at least a to learn, I get it all immediately, and it's all pulling from my data being compared to other companies of my size. This is the power of MCPs. Now, what I can also do here is I can say, like, make a mini dashboard for this, right? Now, this will take a little bit longer, so maybe we can come back to this. But one thing that's really cool in Claude is you can make website-based dashboards in minutes. So it's actually going to take all of the context that we've just put together and put together that dashboard. We'll come back to this in a second because AI sometimes takes a little bit longer to think, but this part, really fun. Nevertheless, everything we've shown so far, super powerful, a lot you can work with right here. Okay, now this is Drivetrain. Let's jump over to a different use case, a different tool. Maybe before I do, Kevin, any questions coming in there that you think I should address?
Nothing so
Nothing,
far.
so
Please,
no
audience,
problem. If you guys have questions,
need to
oh,
ask
go ahead.
questions as you go along.
Yeah, please do. Lots of time. We'll also have a time at the end for questions. But if you have anything in the meantime, of course, we can address those now. Now here, some of you may have heard of a separate tool. N8N. This is a very, very powerful tool for automation mixed with AI intelligence, which are two fundamental pillars of speeding up your life. Here is an instance of a process that I've automated using N8N. It looks maybe like any tool at the forefront, a bit complex. I can assure you that I know 0 lines of code and I created this, right? So it's not difficult. What we're trying to do here is trigger a process that will have several different steps that I would typically do with some sort of cadence. For example, maybe I aggregate all of my pipeline data and I bring it into a Google Sheet. And then I do some sort of pivot based on that close date, and I send out a Slack message every single week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every single day, let's just say, to specific stakeholders that need to see what's happening there. That's exactly what I've done here. I've initiated this trigger. I want it to be at 9 a.m. PT on Monday. Then I want to pull in rows from that Google Sheet that I was just showing before. Once again, that was just some simple CRM data that I've brought in. The next piece, though, and this is the critical one, is I want to process that CRM data and actually analyze the pipeline to get some insights. Now, I'm going to double click on this and open it up. Try not to lose your breath. All of this that you see right here, that's daunting, and I didn't write a word of it. I just simply went to GPT and say, hey, I'm making this process in N8N, and I need the data to be formatted this way. Can you write code in JavaScript that will basically set it up the way that I want it to? And this is what came out. I copy and pasted it. I did nothing here, guys. That's all you got to do. And then the last step was send a Slack message. Okay. Now I've linked this up with my colleagues, but if I want to execute this, I just press the execute button. Scheduled, starts getting the rows, starts processing the code, and then sends a message. Workflow executed successfully. If I jump over to my Slack, right, let's jump over right here, you will actually see it's 11:13 a.m. East Coast. That is this, right? And I've linked it up to my colleague Praveen's account. That is exactly what's flown in, automated with N8N workflow. Okay, this is super cool. We've obviously made our own little Slack channel here to track that. So that updates can occur, but you could post this anywhere you like. It could hit stakeholders, right? You could see the automation potential here specifically, and it's spat it all out for me. Okay, so this is another powerful piece of leveraging this. One of the other things you might have noticed right here is my dashboard's ready. So I've come back now. This is my MCP dashboard. One thing that's really cool is I might, let's publish this, right? Let's publish and copy link. Now, my little dashboard that we were looking at before is now ready to be posted. Let's actually put this up into a URL and see what we've got here. Now I can start sharing this with people. Here's my currently monthly FTE, my target revenue per FTE, my performance gap below industry benchmark, optimal headcount, and then some various different items that I can work with here against other competitors and benchmarks and whatnot. So here's where I'm dying, and here's where I'm need to focus my attention. But here's what's really killing me. This is awesome. I can share this with whoever I like. I can update this dashboard. It's all automated, and it's essentially just a URL that you can share with people. The chances that someone's going to guess this URL is pretty low, but you can also add in all the permissions that you would expect specifically from Drivetrain. If you have specific user permissions, you're going to translate those across. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
A number of questions have come in, not necessarily straight about this particular dashboard that you've put in, but people are catching up now on the Claude and ChatGPT thing.
Yes.
Jeremy's asking, first of all, how does Claude know your data? Did you upload it or does it access your desktop or something?
Got it. Yeah, so we actually connect, right? This is a Drivetrain specific item that we've designed, right? If I go into like my settings, what you have actually in Drivetrain, let's jump over here, is you have this developer mode that we've spent some time investing in. In developer mode, you can connect your MCP with specific systems, right? That's what the MCP is for. We've done that specifically for Drivetrain. We're the only tool on earth that has it as an FP&A tool. And so not any tool can do this right now, which is why I'm showing it on Drivetrain specifically. But what we're talking about is potentials. What can you potentially do with your data? Our customers are going to use this or are using this, depending on if they've signed up for it or not. But it's actually a live link, right? It's essentially the API equivalent.
Okay, brilliant. So David's asking, when you're benchmarking, how can you be sure that Claude is benchmarking against the relevant comparator set?
Great question. And this is one thing that's awesome with Claude. Oh, let's jump back over here. Right. In Claude itself, they will always give you some sort of what's the word, like trail for where it's pulling data from. So, what companies did you use as a benchmark, right? Very simple. And so now it'll do an analysis on what it did an analysis on and look up, specific surveys that it used. So here it uses 2025 surveys, 1,000 SaaS companies, right? Now I might ask, give me links. Let me go investigate this, right? So if you want to pull from this, you're always welcome to kind of, work more specifically on this. Maybe you want to refine the company list or refine the study that it's pulling from. But that's pretty similar to how you'd use any, GPT, Claude sort of AI helper.
Mhm. So a couple of folk are saying here, is it secure to bring official financial data into Claude?
Okay, so there's two segments of that. The first segment of that is, are my permissions in Drivetrain securely transferred over to Claude? If I don't have access to salary in Drivetrain, and then I come over to Claude and start asking salary data, is it going to give me everything that I can't see over there? The answer is no. It's a one-to-one match. So what we have in Drivetrain, what we've designed in Drivetrain, will transfer over to this. If I don't have access there, I can't see it here. If I can see it there, then I'll be able to ask about it here. On the
Yeah,
other side of things, the security piece of Claude, of GPT, that's up to them. And for the most part, it's open data. Now, that doesn't mean that I can come in as a layman and see your data in here. But they have said, right, like this data is not like, completely privatized, right? And that's their company specific item. Again, I can't log into someone else's MCP and see it, right? They've got security settings there, but they haven't actually, for the most part, shared how they plan to use people's data.
yeah,
And that's more of like an industry question.
yeah. That's that's clearly things that are going to worry people. I mean, okay, we're showing
Definitely.
the example here with Drivetrain. I can guess that by this time next year, nearly every FP&A system is going to be doing something similar. We're just seeing what's happening at the bleeding edge at the moment. And
Sure.
the questions you're asking are going to be relevant to everything. And security is going to be the big thing that's on everybody's mind. Putting your data into AI in 2026 is going to be one of the big things. But is it
Definitely.
firstly, from the point of view, can anybody outside your organization see it? Secondly, making sure that you're preserving privacy within your own organization, and the salary thing being a great example, Kirk. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
One thing I recommend, like and this is what we recommend to our customers, if you do want like complete security, buy an enterprise license. Enterprise licenses are completely private, right? So if
yeah,
you're using your casual GPT, who knows? But if you're using the enterprise, the whole point of that is the data security piece there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and just to clarify this, Anthony is asking, are you saying that my data would be included in Claude's data pool? E.g., is it not a closed
No,
envelope?
no. So if you don't use the enterprise license, then perhaps I'm not sure exactly how GPT and Claude does that. If you do use the enterprise data, then it will not be. It's completely off limits to everybody else. It's just you guys. It's in its own private environment.
Yeah.
Great
Okay.
question. Great clarifying question.
Okay. There's another question. How do you use ChatGPT to write the code for N8N? And ChatGPT is brilliant at writing code. I've
It
used it
is.
like C Sharp, PHP for programming Arduinos and things like that. It is a brilliant tool for writing code. Simple
Yep.
stuff.
It is. It's actually incredible. I've been vibe coding a lot with it as well, which is a lot of fun, making like little apps here and there. The answer to that is pretty simple. Ask it as if you'd ask a person. I need help writing this N8N code that's meant to do this. Write that. Write that literally right here in Claude and GPT, whatever, and then you'll be able to come back to this and just paste it right here. And if you're having troubles, everyone knows the screenshot option. Take a little screenshot right here and say, "This is what I need to fill in. Help me fill this in." And it'll be like, I see what you're doing here. You need this, right? And it'll give it to you. If that doesn't work, no problem. Paste the error, copy and paste the error that it gave you into GPT and it'll be like, oh, I see what's happening here, right? In that way, you can essentially work with it or treat it as if it was an analyst.
Mm, yeah. Kirk, I don't want to interrupt you any more at the moment. Otherwise we'll never get to the end of the presentation. So I'll invite you to crack on at this point.
No problem. Yeah. I see one more here about connecting what's actually connected. So we connect everything that you could typically imagine. We connect with over 800 tools. The typical systems, ERP. So that would be like your QuickBooks, Sage Intacct, Campfire, Rillet, SAP, those big ones. CRM, Salesforce, HubSpot, any other type of CRMs that you typically recommend, and then HRIS tools. So anything Bamboo HR, Rippling, Workday, those pieces there in particular are the three big ones. But then there's other things like things as obscure as MailChimp. You want to track your emails, right? Anything that you may want to forecast on where you need an actual base to build your forecast on top of. That's what we do. And I'll show you a little bit more about that a little bit later. Actually, while we do this, let's just quickly jump over to Drivetrain. So here is Drivetrain. We'll talk a bit more about what's going on here. Where I want to bring your attention right now is to the data section, because there's a lot we can do with AI to manipulate or enrich data sets to make it more wholesome and to do stuff with it that the source systems can't even do. In particular, I'm going to go into this contract master. And the reason I'm going to come here is because this is a real world example that I got. I received this ask. Request for enrichment of data of contract master. This was the ask. Calculate the age of customer in months based on the difference between contract start date and contract end date, or termination date, or today's date, whichever is earlier, right? And this takes a little bit of time to create. I simply just copied it, came up here to our native data evaluator. This is anytime you see this logo, Drive AI, you'll see it down here as well. We'll talk a bit about it a little bit later too. This is some sort of AI feature within Drivetrain. I didn't want to do this calc, so of course I put it in here, and it will now enrich the data for me. It will create this column for me such that it is a usable format. Right now, I've got this right here, customer age and month. Now, of course, I validated this to make sure this was correct, and it was totally correct. But the point is, this is now a trustworthy source of doing data analysis. As my contract master data syncs over time, this will occur automatically. Now, one you might have seen there following the email, I actually responded. We were doing a little bit of talking about a clawback. And so I actually did the calculation using AI again, and I just sent back to her what we were actually doing with that clawback. What was my prompt? And so here it's basically saying calculate a clawback amount. And if it's less than a certain amount of days, if it's between a certain amount of days, it should be this, this, or this. Now, in this case, what I would expect to see are a bunch of zeros, except for those given months where clawbacks were necessary. So let's see what it produces here. Over here, there it is, a bunch of zeros. And then if I scroll down, here's a clawback, here's a clawback, here's a clawback, right? This is awesome, right? I didn't need to do anything to create this, and it's essentially a part of my raw data. At the first instance in the data section where your source systems, everything I was mentioning before, is connecting with Drivetrain, I'm enriching it so that I never need to manually create these lookup tables again. Okay, I'll pause here. Any other questions there, Kevin, that you want to address on this as people are sort of sending them in?
Let's see, the latest one I've got. How can this tool interface with ERP, CRM, CPM, other standard API connectors?
Perfect. Yeah, I mean that's back in this data section. You'll see here that connecting tools, we've got a lot of them. It's as simple as just logging in for the most part, whether that's Sage, QuickBooks, Salesforce, right? Doesn't matter. We just connect with them all. You're going to need things as simple as spreadsheets, Google Sheets, LinkedIn, CSV, OneDrive. But then you're also going to need things as complex as your database and warehouses. Like I said, we've connected with pretty much all of them at this point. Okay, now let's take a slight turn here. And I've just shown you some data transforms. Let's see, what can you really kind of start today on this? These are the type of things that we typically see. And I'm going to show you how we can build some sort of prompt pack for these items. And this will all be using GPT specifically, right? So if you don't have any tools, anything fancy other than just GPT, what can I actually build to kind of help with my process of getting these sort of what we call quick wins? And then at the end of this, I'll actually show you some prompt packs that you can download as well. So let's talk specifically about a couple of these. FX rate, update adjuster, expense reimbursement using custom GPT. Some people don't know what custom GPT and agent mode is. We're going to talk about those right there, right now as well. Let's jump into this. This FX rate updater. Okay, I want to actually show you what's going on here. I've pre-populated this. Why? This is one of our prompts. Okay, here what I'm asking it to do is fetch foreign exchange rates from EXE. EXE is, for those of you that don't know, a currency exchange FX rate provider. And I've said pull it from these tables for the month-end dates of these two dates. I want you to paste it all in this Google Doc. And specifically, that Google Doc is going to look like this. Made it very simple here for this use case. Now, I've given it some formatting options. You'll notice, though, this is the type of request that I might give to an analyst. But I don't, and I might say, hey, I want you to remember these instructions, and I want you to come back and do them every single day, every single week, 3 times a week, whatever. These instructions, the only piece that you got to remember is that I've actually put this in agent mode. What's the difference between agent mode and the rest of it? Typically, ChatGPT is an informational bot. It will scrape the internet and come up with a statistical answer that it thinks you want to hear. That's why every answer is slightly different. In agent mode, what I'm getting it to do is tasks. So let's launch this guy right here. Now, this will take a little bit of time. Maybe it'll ask me some summarizing questions or clarifying questions. Right? You can see right here, it's understood it. That's lovely. It's going to now go into it. And one thing that sometimes it actually does is it shows you. And you can see that's doing that right here. So now it's actually going and doing the process that you've just asked it to. One reason I do like this a lot is I've asked it things in agent mode where I didn't know how to do it, but I asked it, and then it shows me, just like this, how it went and did it. And so even though I don't know, it's now literally showing me how it would do it, as if an analyst was walking me through the actual steps they would take to create it. Let's leave this here for a second. I've timed this one. This one takes about 11 minutes in total to go through, so we can come back to this. In the meantime, let's take a look at a different example in GPT, and we can kind of compare and contrast. And that was the expense reimbursement checker that we were talking about. This is something known as a custom GPT. Okay, so let's jump back here really quickly. You'll actually see, while this is loading, I've already got the expense reimbursement item right here. Okay, now what's happening here is this was all done in the Explore page. So if you've never come to Explore, go check this out. Up here, you can create what you might call your GPTs. And you can see I've got one right here. Let's go into the editor quickly and see what I've done. Now here, in this configure setting, this is where I've set up the name of this, the description, and then specifically, what are the instructions? What I'm essentially doing is every single time I put a prompt into GPT, I want you to consider this context. And I've, in this case, put in my expense reimbursement tasks. Review the policies, evaluate the expense data, state reimbursable or non-reimbursable, provide a brief bullet or rationale as to why, and then if any concerns, all these sorts of things, right? And then here is that actual policy right here, right? Obviously, a little simplified and constricted, but you get the idea. Now, how can I use this? Well, let's go back really quickly into my expense reimbursement. And let's actually say, hey, I've got a receipt that I want to use. Specifically, this receipt. This is a crumpled up receipt that I've used, and I wanted to kind of take a picture and upload it of. Can I leverage this? You can. So let's come in here. I'm going to add photos and files, go into my little desktop. Here's my little expense reimbursement. I'm going to upload that. And I might say something like, is this reimbursable? Okay, mind the spelling. And so now it's going to analyze my receipt with words that I certainly can't see, but it probably can. And it's going to kind of drill in and tell me if this is reimbursable or not, based on the context and the policy that we were looking at before. Analyzing the image, making sure it is or is not readable. We'll see. And now I can see, okay, it's got a clarifying question. Was this what was the business purpose of these grocery items, right? All these different pieces here. I can see in general, it's saying not reimbursable. And so if you provide answers to clarifying questions, I can reassess. Maybe I do these one by one, but in general, I might just say, I was just hungry and wanted chocolate. Okay, let's see if that context updates anything or keeps it relatively the same. All in all, termination, not reimbursable. And it's actually referencing the policy. So you can see, even though I didn't have to give this context each time I did the prompt, it was all there for me. So you can imagine the use cases for this. I'm obviously talking about policy here. It could be categories of transactions being analyzed. Anything that you would typically have some sort of reference point or reference document for, you can pull in here. Okay, now let's jump back really quickly to these fetch FX rates. It's working here. Let's see if it's updated anything here. Not yet. Still doing its things, trying to pull it out. We'll come back and check on this as it continues to go. Oh, here we go. It's actually jumping to my Google tab, it looks like.
Okay. There's a
Mm,
question coming here, Kirk from
yeah.
Leeds. I note longer queries often do not get fully carried out by AI. Do you cut
Okay.
tasks up to achieve smaller prompts?
Do you what, sorry?
Do you cut tasks up to achieve smaller prompts?
That's up to the user. I personally don't. I use it as an excuse to go walk away and grab a coffee. So I like to give it as much detail as possible. As long as I can trust that it'll get to the answer eventually, I'm happy to give it a task that'll take like 20 minutes. I'm happy to do that. That's either my lunch break or I've got other things to do, right? We all have a million things to do, and I can start working on those things while it's thinking. Okay, so that's up to the user. If you want to break it up, if it makes you feel more comfortable, sure. I used to do that, but now I essentially just trust it enough with the prompt packs that I've given it that it should be able to do its thing, no problem. Okay, so that would be my answer to that one.
So Tim's asking that expense checker, is that running on its own, or does an employee have to run it like you did?
So in my case, I ran it, but with everything you've learned today, you wouldn't. You would use N8N, right? You would upload all of your expenses into like a Google Drive, and then you might either execute this or you might have it every Monday it triggers, and you would say, go into X Google Drive. In this case, it's a sheet, but you would say Google Drive, pull everything and analyze it and tell me which ones are reimbursable, which ones are not, and the clarifying items needed, right? So everything is automatable to anything that you would do mouse clicking for, right? Anything that you would do something like this for is automatable. So I personally am doing this manually right now, but if this was what I had to do, if this was my job, I would not. I would let AI automate as much as possible.
Yeah. Because
That's
the logical move from this is not just you running it on your own expenses, it's an expense processing a person running it on hundreds of people's expenses.
totally. And we all have our unique use cases where automation would be really nice.
Mm.
Yeah. Any other questions, Kim, before I jump on? We're
I
all
think
good.
that's it at the moment.
Beautiful. So let's jump onto here. I promised you these AI prompt packs. Definitely take out your iPhone really quickly here, scan this, download this, and we can and you'll have this kind of prompt pack for us. It's something out of the box that we've seen as a great use case, even though most of our customers are obviously using Drivetrain in its entirety. There's always going to be use cases that will fall out of it, right? Transaction modeling, where you need one-time changes to certain things really quickly, sharing things with certain people that you may want to do always in slides or always in PowerPoint, right? There's always some sort of AI capability, and as a result, there's always some sort of prompt pack for that AI capability. So definitely keep this in mind. If you need to see this again or you didn't get your phone out in time, we will be sending this out, and we also have the recording for you. A couple quick wins for you today. Prompt pack, that's what we've just given. Definitely take a look at that. Workflow automation. Sounds like we've got a couple questions on this. This was specifically regarding N8N, but there's other tools out there too. Take a look around, just ask ChatGPT, I'm looking to automate this process. What's the best tool for me? It'll give you an array and you can start your research process. This last one here, AI co-pilots. Essentially, these little chatbots on the side of all these web apps we keep seeing that are going to help us. You got Copilot for Excel. We've got similar things now for Sheets, right? How do all of these work? And can we actually do that in Drivetrain and Well in a meaningful way for, let's say, BVA? And the answer is yes. I'm going to show this in a couple ways. First, we've got report creation, and then we've got BVA. I'm going to show you these kind of in tandem really quickly here. If I jump over here, we're back in Drivetrain now. There are all these beautiful reports here. Some of these I created. Some of these I certainly did not create. You'll notice this guy right here is another AI bot. That's what shows up when I click this. I've prompted it to say, create a CEO dashboard with relevant metrics. Now, this is going to go and create something like what you see here. It's going to go into my metrics, take a look at all of the metrics specifically for a CEO or what a CEO might want, and it'll go and create that CEO dashboard. We'll come back to this because this is one of those ones that will take a little bit of time, something similar to this. Here you can see it's populated 2 lines. If I come back over here, there are my 2 lines populated, right? So it's doing its thing. However slowly it might be, it's working. Now, in the meantime, while this is creating the headcount analysis, let's analyze how we can do BVA. Super important. We're always going to have our actuals, but then we're going to have a budget that we've saved down. Now, versioning is something that's quite important in Drivetrain. We have 2 sides of the coin of what we call hypothetical modeling. One is scenarios, high case, base case, low case, and the other one is versioning, much like what you see here. And we do it pretty similarly to what you might expect in Excel. In Excel, you press File, Save As, and that Excel document, which might create some scenarios, high case, base case, low case, within it, that's being saved down to the side. Our equivalent of that is saying versions new. So I might say FY26 budget, right here. Give it a bit of description of what I'm doing here. Lock it in or keep it live. Either way, when I save it, it creates one of these, and I can now come in and edit these, view them, whatnot. Those are the items that we're talking about when we're talking about comparing BVA. But this has a lot of dimensions. There's a lot here that I can drill into. If I wanted to, I could drill all the way down to the vendor name, or I could just press this button, which, as you know by now, is an AI feature. And while I'm doing that investigation, maybe I'm aggregating it quarterly. I say, I don't really want to see this monthly. I want to see this quarterly here. Now it aggregates to quarterly. Maybe I don't want to see this, at this level. I want to see it at the account category level instead. So now the totals of COGS will stay the same, but the breakout will differ. Maybe here I want to see just professional consultancy at the vendor level, right? No problem. You can see that breakout here as well. Whatever level you forecasted at, right? That's what's going to show up as the BVA item. I haven't forecasted the account category level. I've forecasted at the department level. And so now I will see those department level forecasts showing up right here, and then the variance between them. Now, while I'm doing all that, it's done all this. I can see up here at the top, it's done revenue, and I can see the variance by region in this case. Why by region? Well, that's because that's what I've got right here. If I had this broken out at transaction level, customer level, that's what I would see there then as well, right? By default, it's going to do it on what you've shown. That's where it's doing the analysis. But the question always is, how deep can it go? And the answer, as deep as the dimensions that you've brought in. And dimensions are simply unique values in any given column. So if you have customer, if you have transaction, if you have vendor, you can work with all this. Maybe I refine it a little bit. Maybe I'm happy with it. Either way, eventually, I'm going to add it to my report. And now this beautiful report that I started with before, I'm just going to drag this wording up right here. Right? Maybe we'll spruce it up a little bit. And maybe I'll even say, well, I actually want to add my own wording here. Revenue came in at, and I'm actually going to reference the revenue metric. Right now it reads as revenue came in as revenue. But if I press save, now I can see this number, which is the revenue metric for this timeline. So of course, if I change the timeline, so too does that 51 million change to 23 million. What we're essentially doing is automating the rolling forward of this report such that if I write this the right way and put in the metrics in the right spot, I can always say revenue came in at this, right? So this piece here, super cool. Let's jump back to here. Oh, perfect timing. Look at this. So now it is building out my CEO dashboard right here. You can see that, and it's already put me into the editor. Okay, now this CEO dashboard, maybe I like it. Maybe there's a couple of changes I want to make. Personally, I know 4 of these fit up here, right? I can see some of the reports it's putting together, nice line charts. In this case, the timeline doesn't seem to make much sense. So maybe I'll bring this back a little bit and I'll just say, yeah, let's actually do this just like April till May, right? And so now all the data that's associated, much better, looks a little cleaner, a bit more full, right? Maybe there's a chart down here that I really like. Actually, and I say, this guy right here, customer growth trend. This is really important to our board. So we're actually going to start with it, right? That's what we're going to do right here. Maybe with this, I also want to add some data labels just to make it look a little cleaner. And when I press save, here's my CEO dashboard. There we go. I've done it. Every single thing that it thought was important, and maybe I add to it, maybe I change it, it is added for me right here. And remember, anything you see in Drivetrain, you can always drill down into. You should be able to get to the bottom level of whatever you're looking at and also follow those transactions to those source systems and see where they're coming from. I'm not logged into NetSuite, but if I was, that particular journal entry would show up for me. Okay, I'll pause here again. Any questions flowing in that I need to address? Happy to save them to the end too. I'm going to assume that's a no. Okay, so this
Sorry,
next piece.
microphone was off. Apologies.
No problem.
Actually, no. Just Richard saying I have a colleague who is manually processing expense claims, incredibly time consuming.
The
The
worst.
checks that are to confirm if they're reversible or not would be really good. And that's something there, Ricardo, that I'd just say is that, a lot of the time you've got to get your head away from the day-to-day in the office and just start using your imagination because, hey, coming up with these things, that's when you really put your mind to it, you can come up with all sorts of things you can use agents for.
That's
Yeah,
the truth.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, one's just come in from Anthony Collins. Can Drivetrain pull data direct from your accounting system, e.g. Zero, just from the API link?
Definitely. In fact, let me bring one up here. I've got this sensitized version of a real customer that not only was multi-currency, but was also multi-entity. And the reason that or the way they kind of brought in their multi-entity data was through 12 different zero instances, which you can see right here. APAC, Acme Holding South Africa, UK, right? All of this, how do I get it to a point where I'm essentially doing this? I can filter the entire page on APAC. And then since I'm in APAC, maybe it makes more sense to see it in the Australian dollar. But if for fun, I don't want to see it in the Australian dollar and I want to see it in the Mexican peso, how do I do that? Right? That's our back end analyses that we have. We have many multi-entity, multi-currency customers. Our public companies expect it of us. But the cool part about this is that it's all automated. The very first step of which I won't go into too much detail, is making sure these are all aggregated. That's what we call drivetrain data sets. So essentially, this zero general ledger, this is the reason I brought this up is because it's zero specifically, is combining every single zero entity you saw. Now, what if this customer had 8 zero and then 5 NetSuite and then 7 Sage? We've got customers like that too. And it doesn't matter. We've done this enough times where we know which columns should match up with what, and we can create that consolidated drivetrain data sets, general ledger, balance sheet accounts. Okay. So I hope that answers that question there.
A couple of questions coming in about consolidation. And
Sure.
I must admit, I'd thought of Drivetrain as an FP&A tool. Folk are asking, can Drivetrain do automatic multi-entity consolidation? And it's
Of
that
course.
the month-end thing that happens when you start to outgrow zero. You start wondering how on earth do you automate this?
Yeah. Yeah, fair to ask because it is a ginormous problem, and we solved it a couple years ago, but it is huge. I briefly mentioned the first part of this. The first step is to bring in all of these entities into one data set. Once we have that, let's jump into the general ledger here really quickly. All we need from our customers is this. What is the reporting currency? That gives us the one rate. If we have the one rate, then we can do the next step, which is bring in the FX rates. Now we connect with Exe, we connect with Google Finance, there's a couple other ones. This customer didn't do any of those. They said we want more control over our FX rates. So all of these are Google Sheets specific tabs that they brought in and said, this is what we want fueling our FX rates. You'll see the month. You'll see the currency against the USD. You'll see, and this is important, two types of rates. Average for the P&L, current for the balance sheet, right? And then the rates themselves. All of this is occurring in the backend to give us this beautiful view that I was showing you before. In fact, we can even bring in intercompany eliminations and actually track them, right? If I want to see what these 194,000 of eliminated entries are, I can see them. And once again, if I click this, it'll open up Zero and prompt me to log in. If I have access to it, it'll bring me to that actual entry. Now, the question here is, how do you do eliminations? My question always back is, what level do you do eliminations at? I normally create some sort of command center for consolidations, and this allows me to do consolidations at the account level, at the top side journal entry adjustment level, at the transaction level. Although we see people consolidating full entities, right? You might put the slate clean, right? The whole point is, can I do this? Can I simply add new rows and add new consolidations? And the answer is yes, 100%. So no problem there. We've solved for that one.
Yeah,
I know I'm totally off track because this is not AI, but
yeah.
that was a good question.
No, that question in that consolidation is one of the reasons that people grow out of Zero and QuickBooks, and there are others. Coming up in next week actually, 10th of December, we've got an entire demo day looking at all sorts of solutions that you should be considering when you're outgrowing Zero and QuickBooks. Probably well worth tuning in and taking a look because there are a whole load more issues in there than just consolidation.
Definitely. So let's jump over quickly here to some of the other pieces. What I want to touch on are those co-pilot app builders that we were talking about. Here in the Drive App Hub, this is a part of our modeling section within Drivetrain, and this is normally the second step of anybody that joins Drivetrain. First, they log into their data sets, NetSuite, QuickBooks, Rippling, Workday, whatever, and then they start launching these. In this case, I might launch a three-statement financial model. This is specifically tied to NetSuite. We have this for most ERPs. Now it'll generate a fully integrated three-statement model. This takes 7 minutes. It's incredible. And what it does is it looks at the granularity of your NetSuite, builds out what it thinks it believes is similar. Numbers will match cent for cent. And with that, of course, it'll create all your beautiful reports. All the reports that I've showed you with the automation there, it does something similar here. So after syncing your NetSuite, this is stage 2, launch the app. The next one that I highly recommend is one of these, headcount and payroll or advanced headcount and payroll. You'll notice these are tool agnostic. They are not tied to an HRS system, and that's because for the most part, their HRS systems are homogeneous in the output. First name, last name, salary, start date. These sorts of things allow us to create beautiful things, let's say like this. Opening headcount, new hires, attrition, closing. This closing amount is the beginning month's opening amount, and the cycle continues. Do I have dimensionality? Of course. In this case, it's Bamboo HR data, so it's taking the Bamboo department, and then all of the employees underneath it right here. Underneath this, I have all the cost components. In this case, it's the US version, so you can see 401k. This one here is the advanced version, so we're going all the way down to the SUDA FUTA level. This one's designed to match the pay stub. Right? That's how detailed we're forecasting. Some customers, though, they opt for something a little bit more high level. Why am I showing you all this? Where does AI play into this? Well, in this dimensionality that I'm showing you right here, you'll notice I have actual heads and I have forecasted heads, these to be hires. And they're all in one data set, which is already, a feat of Drivetrains to have the actual and the forecasted in the same table. But where this is coming from is what we call lists. And lists is super powerful because it can house actual data. And on the bottom here, I can add my little forecasted data, right? If I want to add a new line, can bring this in, to be hired 19, right? We'll add all our details across. We'll give them some sort of start date here, and then salary, right? Now, where we need help is reconciling to be hired 3 to when I hire Joe Schmo, to be hired 6 to when I hire Jane, right? How do I know to do this mapping so that I eliminate these, but I add in the actual person so that I'm not double counting? And for that, you're actually going to get a notification that looks something like this. We found some new data. Do you want to update this list? When I click update, I see all of the items that existed this sync from my HRIS that didn't exist in the previous sync. Annika Kumar is a new item. Do I want to add him to the list? I do. But for Aaron Neville, I'm going to map him to an existing item and replace to be hired manager. Now this piece, pretty manual, but what we've pretty much automated this to for the most part is something like this. Arpit Gupta is a recommended match for this. Now even the reconciliation process, which was already an automation feat in and of itself, is even more automated because I don't even have to think who I'm mapping to. It knows that this is the most likely candidate. Now, of course, I can accept those. I can override those. There's going to be use cases for both. Maybe it'll get it wrong. AI is not perfect. But the point is, I can track not only headcount, but actual attribute updates as well. It's noticed that the salary and bonus is increased. Clicking accept will ensure that Amir Pasha here is forecasted at this rate and the actuals remain what they were in the past. And as you go through the motions of all of this, the opposite will also occur. Someone's left the firm, can I create a to be hired for their backfill? And if so, what's the automatic best case scenario for refilling that backfill? Is it the day after? Should they be hired, this to be hired on August 13th, or is it 30, 60, 90? Is the salary the same, or should I have an increment? These are the sort of questions that we want AI's help in answering so that our backfills are appropriately spaced depending on their department, right? Those sorts of things. I'll pause here again. Can imagine there's some questions with each of this. Anything there before we kind of start summing up here?
Yeah. No fresh questions at the moment, Kirk, but there's one in there that I hadn't answered, which is actually to me rather than you. Does GrowCFO offer executive bootcamp about AI for finance and administration management? The answer to that is yes. Ollie Deacon ran one relatively recently. We've got a couple of courses coming up in March, which Ollie is running, two 2-hour workshops, process optimization with AI and getting your team to adopt AI. Small group workshops, probably a dozen to 15 people in there, practical breakout sessions and so on. And I dare say there will be more during the year because this area is changing so fast.
Mm.
Planning courses more than about a quarter in advance at the moment is not sensible to do. So the answer is yes, there are. You can join GrowCFO as a free member. You can look through all the upcoming courses. If you want to attend them, then's the time to upgrade to be a paid member. Uh, Jonathan has asked something here. So we use Jet Reports and Power BI with BC. Would we be able to drop Jet, Power BI, and use Drivetrain? And would that be able to support our merchandising team who currently use outputs from Jet?
Yes, 100%. That's no problem. We have a lot of customers connected to Power BI, Tableau, Looker. My only thing there is this. They house historical data really well, but they can't bring in forecast data. So most of the time what I see, frankly, is they might connect them in the beginning, but then our dashboards are just as dynamic. So they end up using Drivetrain because now, sure, they got their actuals, but they've also got the forecast piece too. So you're more than welcome to. The way our reports work is when you log into the reports, you only see what you're meant to see. If I show up to a headcount page and I'm the head of engineering, I only see headcount engineers or engineers from headcount. Sorry, right? That sort of thing automates a lot of the process, and then I can have my inputs.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think, Jonathan, reflecting on that, I'm talking to a number of our tech partners. What I'm seeing in the FP&A area is, some some FP&A suppliers are saying, no, drop your spreadsheets and everything completely, use our tool. Others are taking the approach that says, well, we know finance like Excel, therefore we're working with Excel, which is much more the approach you've seen today. And then others are saying specifically, look, can we put the right data pool behind spreadsheets and behind Power BI so you can continue to use them? There's no right answer to that. It's whichever one suits what we're doing the best.
Beautiful.
Right.
So I
I'll,
think we have one more poll here, Kevin,
yeah.
and then we can cap it off.
Right. Okay. I will launch the final poll.
No probs. What we're really asking here is there anything you want to explore more after today's session? This is good for our feedback. What's of most interest to you guys? And then frankly, if you just want to stay up to date with kind of what we're doing at Drivetrain, see the best in class FP&A tools, we want to learn more about that as well. We are the highest rated FP&A tool, strategic finance tool on G2, for example, where you can review them. That's for a reason. And we are also the forefront in AI. So if there's other things you want to see, we'd love to hear that feedback. But of course, if there's things that you want to see more of, we'd love to hear that too. Now, we've got a couple of things here that we went over. Here's a recap. I'll let you just, since we're based on time here, review each of these when we send out the documents. You'll have access to this. But if you have any questions on these, definitely jump in as well. What are we talking about on the roadmap? How can we get this going in your use case today? Well, first things first, data readiness. You don't need perfectly clean data. It does not exist. It will never exist, right? If you think that you're going to keep all 502 options when inputting a Salesforce opportunity clean, you're kidding yourself. Salesforce is going to be a little messy. Your ERP is going to be a little bit messy. That's okay. Leverage that as much as you can for data cleanup in GPT and Claude. Tool evaluation integration. We spoke about a couple tools today. N8N, obviously Drivetrain, GPT, but the various different versions of GPT. Evaluate which one is best for you, which will work best with your systems. In Drivetrain specifically, we use different AI tools for our own AI processes as well. There's not a one size fits all when it comes to AI tools. And so certainly start looking into what works best for you guys. Team enablement, throw them in the deep end. When it comes to AI, there is no like take it slowly. Just jump in. It'll be less daunting than you think, and it's a lot easier to adopt than you think. The more you start talking to it just like a person, let's just say, the quicker that you'll be able to adopt this. And then of course, number four, impact and evangelism, right? Give it time before you start jumping to conclusions on it. But once you understand kind of what is really changing in your workforce, start that evangelism process with other people in the group. The more people are adopting this, the easier it's going to be for your group as well. Okay, now again, there's more tools out there. These are some of the ones that I recommend exploring. Claude Artifact, super great. It's for custom AI tools or apps like categorizing bank transactions here as an example. Lovable for vibe coding. For those of you that don't know what vibe coding is, it's basically taking natural language, like how I'm talking now, and turn it into an app and turn it into code. You can write Python, you can write Java, all with the matter of just typing typical natural language. And we spoke about N8N. Another one that you could take a look at is Zapier, right? Model Context Protocol is the MCP thing we started with, where we were actually connecting Drivetrain to Claude and leveraging the power of Claude with the power of Drivetrain's dataset. And then agent frameworks, LangChain, Vertex AI, these sort of AI bots that may be useful in your analysis or processes. Okay, now, like I said before, jump in. Doesn't matter how big or small you jump in, just jump in. The people that are going to succeed in being the best in class finance departments are the ones that start sooner rather than later. Like I said, the jump is not as big as you think it is, but we're also here to kind of answer those questions. So definitely get in touch. If you want to reach out to me, you could see my email there. If you want to reach out to the sales team to learn a little bit more about booking a demo and those sorts of things, you can see that QR code here as well. We've still got about 2 minutes left here. And so any other questions, I'd love to take this time to answer it. Kevin, anything coming in on your end?
Anthony's asking, will we get a copy of the slide pack presentation? Well, no, not from GrowCFO, but this is recorded and you will have access to the recording of the webinar. Now, I dare say if you end up getting a hold of Kirk directly through the screen that's in front of you, Kirk may well share his slides with you.
You read my mind.
Okay. Is that it? What would you recommend Lovable for use case instead of Claude ChatGPT?
So Lovable specifically for, let's say, app creation, right? This would compete more with like your replets and your cursors. These are all apps where the purpose of the app is kind of as an AI wrapper, is what they call it, where you're basically saying, I'm going to leverage all the power of GPT and Claude, but I'm going to specify it, kind of like what we did a little bit with the expense tracker. I'm going to specify it to be used for app creation, meaning all they're thinking about is code. They make it very easy for you with their buttons that they press. You can go in build mode. You can go in plan mode. I want to plan my app versus I want to build my app. When we talk about apps, we're not talking about apps on your phone, right? You could do that too. But it might be something like the dashboard we created. I want that to be interactive. I want to make something a little bit more robust from my data. Can I create something that's essentially URL or website driven or clickable on my screen that I can allow others to input data to, collect data from? Okay, so that would be the use case. You can see right here, data sanitization is another awesome use case where I'm essentially going to upload a data set and use AI to sanitize that data as much as we can, remove spaces, add in dashes, remove underscores, those sorts of things.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the things you can do in that space. Lovable is only one of the tools available now. Now we've got something in development in the background in GrowCFO to help
Mm,
personalized training together where we've effectively done something using one of these app creators that if we'd gone and asked a developer to do it back in the old days, there could have been a couple of months of development time. And it's put it together in no time at all, with no knowledge of code in our team. It is pretty incredible. It proves to me that the biggest skill in the future is going to be learning how to properly prompt AI to get it to do what you want it to do, not how do you write code to get stuff done. Now, there's
true.
a big, big place to go to at the moment with implementing AI. Gosh, very last question. How quick is it to set up a company with Drivetrain?
It varies. I've done it as soon as 3 weeks if there was like a severe need to that customer was coming from another tool and they thought they made a bad decision, so they came over to us and they needed it ASAP. So that's probably the quickest case. Normally, I'd say 80% fall in that 6 to 12 week range, depending on if you're public or if you're just large.
Yeah. But Kirk, Huge thank you for today. I think we've seen, using Drivetrain as the example, the way AI is going to be built into so many of our finance systems going into the future. And you're the first there with that great interface to Claude. Now, the first, but that's something I think we're going to see in all sorts of systems coming up over the next 12 to 18 months.
I
You've
think you're
taken
right.
us through the large language models and what they're up to at the moment, the agent creation, and so on. And I think just really huge thank you for covering so much in such a short time. And this is, to me, this is about, getting your data right, because that's going to be critical for anything you do, and getting your team exposed to building these agents or whatever. Getting started isn't necessarily about a big finance transformation or a big implementation of a system like Drivetrain. It's a great system, but you can do so much. Just go back in the office tomorrow morning and just apply some of the things that Kirk's told you today. Kirk, thank you hugely once again.
Thanks for having me. Great to see everybody, and I look forward to next time.
Okay,
Bye, guys.
take care. Bye.